Okay, so we've identified where we are and we've started on our trip down the road, but let's start getting a little more specific in terms of prioritization and goal setting. So, first off, let's say our goal is to improve profits. There are a number of ways you can do that. One is increase sales. One is increase gross profit margin. If you have a front store, looking at the profitability in your front store, looking at which profits are most profitable, which products are not profitable, eliminating the unprofitable products and expanding in the ones that are. Basic stuff. Expenses, two aspects of expenses. One, slash expenses is always a favorite, but I think the efficient use of your employees is another one. Efficient use of your inventory. So there are a number of goals that you might set for profit prioritization. So which ones do you want to go for? For the biggest bang for your buck is the top line, sales. In the dispensaries, sales represent probably 85% of your total sales. So if you can increase that number, that's going to have the biggest impact on your financial statements. So that's number one. How do we do it? And how easy is it going to be to do it? How does it affect our patient care? These are the types of things we need to look at. So, number one, adherence. Most pharmacies' adherence level is about 50%. Some are 40, some are 60, but let's just use 50 as the example. Now, where do we want it to be? Well, obviously we'd like it to be as high as possible, but we have to set attainable goals. So let's say we're going to set it for 70% and we're going to put a timeline of 1 year on that. So how do we go about achieving that goal? How do we get people to adhere to their drug plan? One of the ways of doing it is synchronizations. If you can get people coming in on a regular basis, there's a good chance that they're going to start adhering to their drug plan and thereby increase the adherence percentage. The more people you have adhering, the higher your script sales are going to be. So that's certainly one aspect of sales and profit improvement.
So basically, if I heard you correctly, there's really three ways of increasing your profit. You increase the revenue, or you decrease the expenses. So I guess if I'm an up and coming pharmacy, I guess it probably makes a lot of sense for me to invest time, invest resources to build out the adherence, build out the synchronization, increase the number of patients, and just sort of attack. Basically, make a good offense to it. But I guess if I'm on the other side of the scale, say I'm an elderly a pharmacist, a pharmacy owner, and I'm getting a lot closer to retirement, would it make sense to do that investment, or possibly would it make sense if the profits are waning a little bit to look at the expense side of it? Is there a difference where you should be on the offense and maybe be on the defense?
Well, again, it depends on the individual. I mean, there are people out there that certainly expenses will increase profitability in the short term. But the thing is that in the long term, how quickly and how do we have the ability? What is our adherence level? Does he even know what it is? The thing is, just because someone's 3 years from retirement doesn't mean they've done all the analysis necessary and done all the adherence levels. It's not necessarily in place. So if you can start the process, even with just a couple of years to go, you might be able to increase that profitability enough that it'll make a difference on your ultimate sale price. So I think it's always nice to say cutting expenses is easy. Cutting expenses will get things done in the short term, but that's maybe 6 months to a year is a short term. Most people aren't thinking about selling for 3 to 5 years, so we still have time.
But I guess the problem I see with cutting expenses is you cut expenses, just inherently then you cut the services that are coming to your patients that are coming in day. Your patients sit there and say, I used to like it because the service was great. They always treated me special, had a little extra time for me. I'm not getting that anymore. And then they decide to go to another pharmacy to see how they do. And it can become like a spiraling downward. So it's, I guess, a little short-term pain or short-term gain you get by cutting expenses, but not necessarily that doesn't help the long-term health of the business that you're trying to accomplish in the first place.
We talked about it before, and again, you spend money to make money. If you're cutting expenses and it's not having an impact, well, fine. I mean, that makes sense to cut the expenses. Yeah. But if you're cutting expenses and it does have an impact, that's where you need to monitor what the expense is for and what the impact is on your business. And without doing the look through, you can have some rather devastating impacts on the financial statements. Just to give you an example, we don't promote having house accounts. House accounts is usually, it's very difficult to monitor and have receivables with patients that are coming in on a daily basis. So that's what we said. So one of the pharmacists out there said, okay, I'm going to stop it then. Well, wait a minute. You've always done house accounts, and by stopping house accounts, everybody then went over to the other pharmacy that did have house accounts.
Right.
So the person followed what was considered to be the proper procedure, but didn't take into consideration what the impact might be.
The cause and effect on the patients and the customers
Cause
coming
and
in day to day, because every action has an equal and opposite reaction type of thing, right?
Well, the thing is that, and that's another one of the lines, equal and opposite reactions is science. And the fact of the matter is, in life, for every action there is a reaction. And it's not always equal, and it's not always opposite, and a lot of times it'll bite you in the butt. And so therefore, you got to take into consideration the full reaction.
And that's why you want to make sure you're doing your analysis, you're doing your homework, and of course then you're doing your review to find out where you are. Because I guess, and again, it's when we look at the metrics that we look at on a monthly basis, wages, occupancy, general administrative, you can see whether the ratios are going up, you can see whether you're going down. Whereas if you're only looking at it, if you're even looking at it on an annual basis, you won't capture the changes in your trends on whether you are getting better or getting worse, because you might make a poor decision by reducing expenses when you're already a lean machine to begin with.
Yeah, and the other thing is, and I'm going to use another statement, equal and opposite reaction statements that don't necessarily apply. Another one that doesn't necessarily apply, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Always was the mantra out there. But the fact of the matter is, you don't have to be sick to get better.
Correct.
And the fact is that just because something isn't broken doesn't mean you can't analyze it and make it better. Correct. And so always look into your systems, not just to see that they're working, but can I make them better?
Yeah. Can I take 1 hour to do the report that used to take 2 hours?
Exactly.
It sounds like it's very simple. It's one. And again, when you're looking at filling prescriptions, we're not talking about taking hours off filling a prescription. You're talking about taking seconds off filling a prescription. And if you take that over some pharmacies where they're doing 100,000 prescriptions, if you just take off 10 seconds for each prescription filled,
that's a lot of time.
That's 1 million seconds.
We talk about pharmacies at intake, meeting with people face to face, as opposed to patients coming in and just meeting with the technician and never seeing or talking to the pharmacist. Does that make sense for you? It probably should. And if that's what you do, it has to be reworked. Your whole dispensary has to be reworked. But what's going to happen in the end?
Yeah, and whether that specific pharmacy intake works for you, it's still the whole workflow process from end to end. You're always trying to improve it, make it better, make it more efficient, increase the profitability.